1995, wonderful alumni, and newly elected trustee. We are so excited to have him, and I'm now going to turn it over to him. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone, and good morning and congratulations to the graduates. Thank you for giving me the privilege of speaking to you today. It's really wonderful to be back here at my first alma mater. Elise, Colin, Christina, and Skylar, I'm happy to tell you that you have successfully completed the first part of your Montessori education. I know what you're thinking. The first part? Didn't I trace enough sandpaper letters, build enough salt maps, count enough bead chains, and answer enough wordly wise problems? Shouldn't I be graduating from Gladwyne Montessori today? The truth is yes. You have completed your assignments, and today you are moving on to new schools and the next part of your education. But your Montessori experience isn't over, and in some sense, it will always be part of you, shaping the way you see the world, the way you approach problems, and pushing you to think differently, and perhaps helping you decide what you want to be when you grow up. You may not completely realize it yet, but while you may be leaving the Gladwyne Montessori School today, it will never leave you. So now you're thinking, what is this guy talking about? He thinks we're going to be solving binomial cubes for the rest of our lives. No, of course not. But I can give you a sense about how Montessori education continues to affect my life today, 15 years after I sat exactly where you guys sit right now. I graduated from the upper elementary at Gladwyne Montessori in 1995, before iPods and iPads, before the internet and Facebook, and before the upper elementary building that you guys learned in was even built. It was a long time ago. As different as things are today, the fundamentals of Montessori education have not changed. And the lessons that I learned at Gladwyne Montessori are still fresh in my mind. A few weeks ago, I was invited by Mrs. Leininger to come back to the school and visit. Even though I was walking into a completely different classroom, it felt familiar and welcoming. It was a classroom just like this where my Montessori education allowed me to fall in love with the concept of designing and building buildings. When I was in 5th grade, 2 architects from the Foundation for Architecture visited the school every Wednesday. Their goal was to expose the students to the profession and teach us about how architects design and build buildings. While most students were interested in the lessons, I was completely hooked. As the weeks progressed, I probably spent more time than I should have building a 4-foot skyscraper out of straws. When we were asked to draw a floor plan of our house, I produced not only the drawings of the first and second floor, I also drew the front and the back of the house. I was pretty much obsessed with designing houses. One week we toured City Hall in Center City, Philadelphia, and we ended the trip. We ended with a trip to the observation deck just below the statue of William Penn. As I stared out over the buildings in the city below me, I knew that I was going to build buildings someday. My teachers, Miss Sarney and Mrs. Leininger, yes, I actually was one of Mrs. Leininger's students, couldn't have been more supportive of my newfound passion. Together with my best friend John Felicetti, who also loved architecture, I started drawing houses. So many houses, in fact, that John and I had to start our own make-believe architecture firm in the classroom. It was called Traditional Splendors Designs. At every chance we could, John and I would design houses. For our friends, for our teachers, for our families. So many houses, in fact, we thought it was fitting to give the school a bound book of all those drawings. As I was going to say, when I visited a few weeks ago, I was so excited to see that book was still on the shelf in Mrs. L's classroom. Only at Gladwyne Montessori would I have had the opportunity to do this. It was the school and its Montessori principles that allowed me to pursue my passion to the fullest extent. And it didn't end. Montessori also taught me to constantly push myself to follow my interests. After graduating from GMS, I went on to Shipley, where I continued to draw, not only on the sides of notebooks, but in advanced art classes. After high school, I went on to college at Penn, where I majored and eventually received a master's degree in architecture and urban studies. Today, while I'm not designing buildings anymore, I work for a company that helps redevelop buildings and neighborhoods in cities all over the country. I was fortunate enough to attend a school that allowed me to cultivate my interest in architecture, act independently to pursue it, and push me to follow through. Recently, I came across a quote by Maria Montessori that I think sums up my point pretty well. She said, "Free the child's potential, and you will transform him into the world." So Elise, Colin, Christina, and Skylar, your potential has been freed, and you're about to be transformed into the world. I hope you've been able to convey, that I've been able to convey to you that your Montessori education isn't over. In fact, it's really just beginning. The next part of your life will be defined by how you will apply what you've learned here. And having met all of you and listened to you talk about how meaningful your time at Montessori has been, I know you will succeed in whatever you do next. So no, you won't be solving binomial cubes for the rest of your life. I promise that. But you may wake up one day and realize that binomial cubes, or maybe that salt map, or perhaps the sandpaper letters, inspired you to pursue your dream. And if that happens, you know you'll have Gladwyne Montessori to thank. Congratulations and good luck.